Good evening and welcome to NTD News. Here are today's top stories. Things are looking up for small businesses. The White House today approving almost $500 billion to support them through the pandemic. The funds will also bolster hospitals and expand virus testing. Some in the South can now go back to work, but not everyone is happy with the lockdown being lifted. The FCC says it will ban 3 Chinese telecom companies unless they can prove they're independent from the Chinese Communist Party. It's the agency's latest move to protect Americans. U.S. lawmakers call out YouTube over a decision to ban all virus videos not in line with the World Health Organization. This even as the WHO's advice is heavily criticized during the pandemic. Thousands of Chinese investors suffering huge losses over a financial product linked to crude oil after the price of oil crashed on Monday. A roughly $480 billion virus relief package is now official. President Trump signed the package into law this afternoon.
84 other countries either.
Another enormous aid package has been approved by the White House.
So with that, I'll sign the bill.
On Friday, President Donald Trump signed the almost $500 billion relief bill into law. The funds will go towards expanding loans for small businesses that are struggling amid the pandemic.
That should have never happened. This should have never happened to our country. This should have never happened to 184 other countries either. This was a disgrace that it was allowed to happen.
Priced at approximately $484 billion, the bill adds to the already historic levels of spending. It authorizes an additional $310 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, which was set up to help hard-hit businesses cover employee payroll and other expenses. Funding for the program ran dry earlier this month, prompting an outcry from the business community.
We have over 1 million.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin also promised surveillance to stop bigger companies who don't have as much need from accessing the money. The companies that do apply may need to provide justification for seeking loans. The bill will also deliver aid to hospitals and expand virus testing.
Over 50,000 Americans have lost their lives to the CCP virus. From nearly 900,000 confirmed cases, over 90,000 have recovered. Some states now starting to reopen. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the details.
Today in the U.S., for the first time in about a month, some Southerners can get out of the house. Here's how a salon in Georgia is starting to reopen its doors.
And we stop them before they enter the store and make sure that we get their temperature and everything.
Alaska, Oklahoma, and Texas are also allowing similar businesses to reopen today. But some Georgia residents aren't so pleased with the decision. Protests erupted in Atlanta today, giving voice to those wanting the state to remain locked down. This as other Americans protest to end lockdowns in their states. Illinois and Michigan extending stay-at-home orders.
While this order is extended to May 15th, I am lifting some of the restrictions.
That's despite pushback from some residents and the state's Republican legislators. The Michigan House Speaker posting in a tweet yesterday, the House and Senate will convene tomorrow to examine our government's response. And Virginia, another state with no plans to return to normal for now. The state is now seeing the longest stay-at-home order in the nation, set to end in mid-June. But for other states, lockdown orders never happened, like in South Dakota.
The data is showing us that we are bending our curve.
South Dakota has yet to see a statewide surge in cases, reporting a total of 10 deaths. U.S. hotspot New York is seeing improvements too. Another day of fewer hospitalizations and little change in the number of new cases. To lower the risk of a possible second wave, the governor is looking at how the virus was handled early on.
But we left the back door open because the virus had left China by the time we did the China travel ban.
He says the virus likely spread to New York from Europe, where it had already taken root. The Chinese regime didn't promptly warn the world about human-to-human transmission, so it was already spreading to other countries by that time. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And good news for New York. The Navy's floating hospital that docked there to help with virus patients is no longer needed. All remaining patients on the USNS Comfort will be transferred off the ship by Sunday. USNS Northwell Health said they're finalizing the transfer of the 42 patients on the ship. Initially, the vessel was only meant to treat non-CCP virus patients, but it was later announced the Comfort would take patients even if they had tested positive. And the Federal Communications Commission is now ordering 3 Chinese telecom carriers to prove that they should be allowed to stay in the United States.
The FCC will bar the companies from operating in the United States unless they can show they are free of influence from the Chinese regime. FCC Commissioner Jeffrey Starks says we've never had a greater need to ensure the security of our communications. It's the latest effort by the FCC to crack down on national security risks posed by Chinese telecoms firms. Earlier this month, the U.S. Justice Department and other federal agencies recommended that China Telecom's authorization to operate in the United States be revoked. The company had been diverting overseas internet traffic through China, raising concerns that data was accessed by the Chinese regime.
And governments around the globe are looking into high-tech ways to trace the contacts of those infected with the virus. But privacy activists warn that the surveillance technology may not be so easy to roll back after the pandemic has passed.
Apple and Google recently announced a joint effort to help public health agencies worldwide. They plan to trace the contacts of infected people using Bluetooth wireless technology. Senior researcher from the University of Toronto, John Scott Railton, questioned if the contact tracing technology could really help contain virus spread.
We don't know if these contact tracing technology ideas are going to work. If you do an experiment with them in real time at the scale of a population, it could go horribly for a lot of different ways. It could also have extremely negative long-term effects on privacy.
Earlier this month, the UK Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, announced the development of an NHS app with similar technology. It can trace movements and notify users to prevent contact with those who are infected. But privacy activists like Silky Carlo say the tech could take away freedoms after the pandemic has passed.
So we have to think, what is life going to be like after the first phase of this pandemic, and the second and the third? And how much of our liberty are we willing to lose? And we've got to be very, very cautious about that.
She also raises another concern. After this phase of the pandemic is over, we may find ourselves building a surveillance architecture, one that supports a very different world to the one we used to live in.
And Germany is conducting several antibody studies to better understand how the virus spreads. Scientists hope to find out if some of the population is now immune. NTD's Germany correspondent Christian Watchen has the story.
Germany is carrying out the largest antibody testing regime in Europe. Antibodies simply show whether someone's immune system has encountered the virus. One study just got underway in Munich. It samples 3,000 selected households for a whole year.
Determining the estimated number of unknown cases is very important. We need to know the amount of spreading and infections of the new SARS coronavirus 2 in Germany.
University staff go from door to door to recruit participants.
First, the people will be informed about the procedure in the study by our teams. They need to know what is happening. They need to answer a couple of questions on a daily basis. We take some 3 millimeters of blood, which will be tested for antibodies.
Scientists hope more data on the spread of infections can give insight into how effective social distancing and other measures have been. And that could help politicians decide when and how to ease them.
Scientists caution that there's no proof yet that antibodies confer protection against the virus. And it's also not clear yet how long such immunity would last.
More antibody studies are underway or about to begin in Germany. One is utilizing samples from blood banks across the country. Another takes a closer look at hotspot communities. And the largest and most representative study will involve 15,000 people at over 150 locations. It starts next month. Some observers say, since there are still many unknowns about the virus, it is too early to use results from these studies to justify easing measures. Reporting by Christian Watchen, NTD News, Berlin.
And in the UK, scientists at Oxford University are working hard on a vaccine, and they're already hitting critical research milestones.
World leaders met virtually on Friday to discuss tackling the spread of the virus. Their goal is to raise $8.1 billion to ramp up work on prevention, diagnostics, and treatment. The WHO initiated the meeting. A spokesman for the U.S. said that the United States would not be involved. Scientists in Britain began vaccine trials on Thursday. At Oxford University, 2 volunteers became the first people in the world to receive a shot of a potential vaccine. And in Vienna, 200 people have gathered to protest against Austria's lockdown measures. Police broke up the crowd due to a rule that currently prohibits gatherings of more than 5 people.
And several U.S. lawmakers are calling out YouTube. This after the company said videos not in line with the World Health Organization would be removed.
Many accuse the WHO of acting as a mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party during the pandemic. The Secretary of State saying yesterday the organization has lost its credibility. But now YouTube will censor and remove any videos not in line with the WHO's recommendations. Senator Ted Cruz responded on Twitter saying the WHO shamelessly broadcasts Chinese communist propaganda, and now YouTube is saying it will censor anything contrary to the WHO. The WHO has praised China's response to the crisis despite the regime's cover-up through silencing whistleblowers and destroying virus samples. Taiwan warned the WHO that the virus could be passed between humans back in December, but the warnings were ignored. The WHO instead echoed the Chinese regime's claim there was no human-to-human transmission, costing the world almost a month of preparation time. The agency was also criticized for advising countries not to impose travel restrictions to curb the spread of the virus. Most of the world has now implemented some form of them. It's unclear if any action will be taken to reverse YouTube's decision.
And in business news, no emergency loans for hedge funds or private equity firms. AT&T names a new CEO, and Wall Street puts America before Europe.
The Small Business Administration said hedge fund and private equity firms are not eligible for the government's emergency loan giveaway. The loans are designed to support businesses like hairdressers and restaurants. The money will help cover employee payroll and rent. U.S. investment banks are decreasing lending activity to Europe. This is allowing European lenders to fill the funding gaps and grab market share. Facing unprecedented demand for loans during the pandemic, U.S. banks have taken a more cautious approach on Europe. They are under pressure to support the American economy. Veteran John Stankey will take over as AT&T CEO. The U.S. telecommunications and media giant is grappling with the virus pandemic along with its late entrance into the global streaming market. Stankey will take over on July 1st. Current CEO Randall Stevenson said he will retire as CEO but will serve as executive chairman of the board until January 2021.
And coming up, thousands of Chinese investors suffered huge losses this week over a financial product linked to oil. Find out how they reacted after the break.
Just how does challenging Chinese Communist Party officials on Twitter fit into Brendan Carr's job as a commissioner for the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC? Why is Huawei's 5G a major data security threat? What steps are being taken to boost America-led 5G development? And how are telehealth and telemedicine being rapidly expanded during this coronavirus pandemic? In this episode, we sit down with FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, who previously served as General Counsel of the FCC and Chief Legal Advisor to the Commission. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek.
Welcome back. Internal documents obtained by NTD show China was preparing for an outbreak before it told the world about human-to-human transmission. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the details.
We acquired internal Chinese documents showing that 5 days before China announced human-to-human transmission, the Chinese CDC had already made plans for the outbreak of the virus and told its local branches to be prepared. On January 15th, the Inner Mongolia CDC issued an urgent notice to local branches, saying the country's national-level CDC had made plans for diagnosis, treatment, prevention, and control of the novel coronavirus. It asked local branches to build up expert teams and told hospitals to prepare adequate drugs and medical supplies. This document reads, "For internal use only, do not share online." This is the same day the Wuhan CDC said there was no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission. China eventually admitted the virus could be passed between humans 5 days later. A video from Beijing's Chaoyang district shows a family being taken away by medical staff. This district is classified as high risk. Chinese state media say that in Guangzhou, around 140,000 people have been tested this month. They say 185 people were infected, with 90% of them not showing symptoms. Canada's Public Health Authority says 1 million KN95 masks bought from China do not meet the standard for healthcare workers and will not be distributed to frontline medical staff. It's not clear if Canada will get a refund. Spain is returning a second batch of faulty virus test kits to China. Spain now wants a full refund for all 640,000. Counterfeit masks claiming to be made in Taiwan are surfacing in Japan. They say made in Taiwan, but fail to meet the standards needed to protect against the virus. But the product inspection certificate says the place of origin is Shenzhen, a city in mainland China. Taiwan's Minister of Health reminding people that Taiwan only donates masks abroad and doesn't sell them. Taiwan just donated 2 million masks to Japan. Meanwhile, California's Governor Gavin Newsom announced he's signing a $1 billion contract with China for medical supplies. His decision has drawn debate from senators who question if it's wise to procure masks from BYD, a Chinese car company that only recently converted to producing masks.
The Chinese regime is heavily criticized for its lack of transparency. Now, after an oil collapse left investors with staggering losses, parts of China's financial sector are now coming under fire too.
Thousands of Chinese investors were shocked on Wednesday after receiving a notice from the Bank of China telling them they'd lost their investment. Some even owe the bank tens of thousands of dollars.
I got 90,000 yuan worth of contracts. Now I need to pay them over 150,000 yuan. I've lost all of my investment and even need to pay an additional deposit.
These individual investors have put their money in a product linked to foreign oil futures called crude oil bao, sold by the state-owned Bank of China. After Monday's oil price crash, the Bank of China halted new transactions for this product, and on Wednesday, it told investors they need to pay what they owe the bank based on this price, a historic low of negative $37 a barrel. Investors were stunned. According to a report by Radio Free Asia, the investors' total loss could be over $4 billion. One receipt circulating online shows the person bought 20,000 contracts and suffered a loss of $1.3 million. His original investment of $550,000 gone, and he even owes the bank $750,000. Angry investors are questioning the bank's risk management and disclosure practices. Some say in the agreement it says investors will be warned when their loss is over 50%, but they hadn't received any warning. They also said that they didn't receive an alert that the oil price could turn negative. Investors also pointed out the product itself has defects. They said the bank waits before the last day of trading to update their contract, instead of doing it several days ahead, like other providers of similar products. According to local media reports, since Wednesday in several cities, some investors are going to Bank of China branches and regulatory agencies to demand answers. They are also getting together to file class action lawsuits against the bank. Chinese regulators have ordered the bank to self-investigate. A post circulating online appears to show an internal memo in which local Bank of China branches are warned to prepare for gatherings or protests and says security staff need to be armed. The post could not be independently verified.
Coming up, eating a healthy diet won't stop the virus, but in New York, it could help lower hospitalizations. More on that when we return.
How do we get to this point? Back in December, the coronavirus was already spreading in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party was covering it up and punishing the whistleblowers who dared to report the truth. Their actions led to this pandemic, which now has us, in America, stuck in our homes and losing our jobs. To this very day, the Communist Party is still lying, making it more critical than ever for us to get honest reporting about China. The Epoch Times is able to bring you the uncensored truth because we maintain a network of underground sources inside of China, hidden from the censors of the communist government. For instance, our investigative team has been contacting individual funeral homes, hospitals, and they've obtained leaked internal documents which show that China's official numbers are massively underreported by a factor of at least 10. If you're looking for an honest source of news that can keep you informed and safe, check out The Epic Times. Go to readepic.com and try your first month for just $1 and get real journalism delivered straight to your doorstep.
Welcome back. A healthy diet can't stop the virus, but according to one doctor, it may help reduce hospitalizations. NTD's Miguel Moreno has the details.
The hospitalization curve in New York seems to be on its way down. And while a healthy diet can't stop the virus, Dr. Nicole Avina said it could help bring down hospitalizations even further.
What we're trying to do now is to reduce the number of people that need to go into the hospital for any reason. And we're finding that, diet and body weight status seems to be linked to some of the cases in which people need to be admitted to the hospital and are having complications from the coronavirus.
The CDC hasn't drawn any conclusions on how the virus affects patients with unhealthy diets, but one of its studies found that about 90% of patients admitted in March had underlying health conditions, obesity and hypertension being the most common.
If we're eating well and maintaining a healthy body weight and doing our best to eat things that are nutritious and good for us, it's going to not only improve our immune response, but it's also going to potentially decrease the chance that we'll need to be admitted to the hospital.
Besides eating healthy, the doctor said people should also try to minimize their stress.
Stress is linked to decreased immunity. So the more highly stressed you are chronically, the lower your immune system is going to be functioning. And it's actually going to weaken your immune system, leaving you susceptible to getting ill.
At this point, it's not clear when the country will fully open up, but Dr. Avina said it's better to try not to worry so much about the unknown and instead focus on the things we do have control over. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
And children confined to their homes under lockdown are drawing what they miss the most. No matter where they are, the themes are often the same.
From Tokyo to Buenos Aires and New York to Kathmandu, kids have taken to their balconies or front lawns to display drawings they've created. 8-year-old Reiko Matsui in Tokyo draws himself between his grandparents, all three of them smiling together. His older sister Yaya comes up with something a little different.
I drew a picture of me hanging out with my friends. What I want to do the most right now is hang out with my friends.
In the German town of Bad Honnef, 6-year-old Tom says,
I am Tom. I am 6 years old. I have painted Grandma and Grandpa because I like them and because I am missing them so much.
Besides longed-for grandparents, children are also depicting the sports they miss. Ivan Posta and brother Vince, living in the Hungarian capital Budapest, draw huge soccer balls. Shaurya is 10 and lives in India's capital of New Delhi.
What I drew basically was like all my favorite restaurants. I drew Starbucks, KFC, McDonald's, and I drew my school because mostly they're the four most important things, except my friends also.
4-year-old Mila stands outside her home holding a drawing of her family.
I made plans with my mother and the virus ruined everything. We planned to go on a trip with my brother Young with my support wheels, and in the end, we didn't go because of the coronavirus.
Lydia lives in the Big Apple. She says she feels lonely.
I miss being social with people, and I drew this picture of me selling lemonade and what it could be like after. And selling lemonade is an example because you can actually talk to people and interact. Now, because of lockdown, you can't really see people.
But for Nipun, lockdowns haven't made much of a difference.
I don't feel anything because I like staying home. I think it's more fun to stay at home than going outside.
In Damascus, 4-year-old Halak paints the virus in red.
I stay at home and I draw and draw and draw, and I stay at home a lot until the coronavirus goes away.
She says she wants to be a dancer when she grows up.
And coming up, surfers enjoy the waves at a beach in California. They practice social distancing while indulging in their hobby. More on that after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Welcome back. In California, some beach enthusiasts enjoy the good weather by practicing their favorite hobby. But of course, all by following social distancing guidelines.
In the California community of Huntington Beach, surfers took to the waves, encouraged by a blue sky and rays of sunshine. Footage shows dozens of surfers enjoying the day, riding waves on the famed beach south of Los Angeles. Although most of California's beaches are closed, some remain open as long as visitors practice social distancing and are separated by 6 feet or more. After being stuck at home for too long, these surfers embrace the chance to have a good time in the fresh air, all by practicing their favorite sport, alongside, but at a safe distance from, their friends.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney.